After taking this test, Malcolm Gladwell, author of Blink and many others, reported his response during an interview with Oprah Winfrey. As I quote, "I took it for the first time and it told me that I had a moderate preference for white people. I was biased, slightly biased against black people, towards white people, which horrified me because my mom's Jamaican. The person in my life who I love more than anyone else is black. And here I was taking a test which said, frankly, I wasn't too crazy about black people, you know? So I did what anyone else would do. I took the test again. Maybe it was an error, right? Same result. Again, same result. And it was just this creepy, disturbing, devastating moment." In January 2005, Shank Vedantam, a Washington Post reporter, wrote a story about this research. One of the individuals he interviewed was a gay activist. Throughout this interview, the activist expressed strong pro-gay attitudes. She was then asked to take an IAT test to check her automatic preference for gay versus straight groups. She was completely shocked by the results of the test. In fact, her male colleague also took the test and was equally stunned. Both activists held bias against homosexuals. They more quickly associated words such as humiliate and painful with gays, and words such as beautiful and glorious with heterosexuals. Given that they are activists for gay rights, it is understandable as to why they wish to remain anonymous after this. While they both thought they would, if anything, show preference to gay people, the test indicated quite the contrary. Being activists for gay rights, their professional circles revolving around gay culture, and the male even living in what he referred to as Washington's gayborhood, it just didn't make any sense to them. This test is known as the Implicit Association Test, IAT for short. Inevitably, your brain stores years of past experiences that you have no way of consciously setting aside when you take this IAT test, hence, it is so extremely effective. You might have your doubts though, and that's okay. Without forcing you to take one of the tests that you might be afraid of, I could still prove the effectiveness to you by offering another IAT test that simply involves flowers and insects. I put a link in the description, courtesy of the creators of the book Blind Spot, for this test that you can take after the video is over if you do still have your doubts. The vast majority of people's results will show that they do have a preference for flowers over insects, of course. This may differ, however, if you're an entomologist or you're a very young boy who has a high interest in insects. When categories can be linked to each other through shared badness or goodness, psychologists call this shared property valence or emotional value. Positive valence attracts and negative valence repels. Positive valence works as mental glue to bond categories into one, such as pleasant words and flowers, for example. However, when there is a lack of positive valence, such as negative words and flowers, it becomes difficult to find a connection between the two categories and thus takes longer. That's why one sheet of the test will always be harder than the other. Even more simple example of how this method actually works is to get a timer and a shuffle deck of cards. First, sort the cards into two piles, one on the right, one on the left, for example, with hearts and diamonds into one and clubs and spades into the other. Now, after you've done this and you time yourself, then the next task is to sort diamonds and spades into one pile and then clubs and hearts into the other pile. The first task was certainly much easier for you because you were able to use one simple rule for this: red suits left and black suits right. While the second one did not have this simple rule, of course. Hence, for many, the second task will take upwards of even 50% longer to complete. In the 1920s and the 30s, the first studies of Americans' attitudes towards ethnic and racial groups were conducted. However, the only methods back then were those of self-reporting. This was still effective during those times because apparently, in the early 20th century, Americans did not have any concerns with expressing these types of attitudes. Of course, this would not be effective at all now, considering present-day Americans would feel quite the contrary. Hypothetically, even if one did have these negative feelings towards certain groups, they would rarely ever be expressed. More interestingly though, often this IAT test can surprise people regarding the results. This is because there are two facets of the mind, the reflective and the automatic. Our reflective preferences are known to us very well. This can include voicing your religious beliefs, for example. In fact, we could even make very complex statements such as, even though I personally have more to gain by voting for President A, I know that President B is best for the country as a whole and thus I will vote for him. Often, these beliefs can be seen in actions as well. As the psychologist William James stated, the power of conscious thoughts and feelings is to create a particular type of fuel for action. For example, religious beliefs may make you pray or even enlist in the military to defend a religious state. On the other hand, the automatic side of our mind is almost a complete stranger to us. We will implicitly know something or feel something, but even these thoughts and feelings are also reflected in our actions as well. This is why people are often very surprised with their IAT results. What's even more surprising to people is when they find out they are biased against the very group that they are in fact a part of themselves, either mentally or physically. This is called dissociation, and this is precisely what was experienced in the first two examples I provided at the start of the video. Malcolm Gladwell is biracial himself, and his mother, who he loves most, is Jamaican. Hence, he was extremely shocked and even disturbed by the results. This, in fact, is extremely common. Remember, that part of our mind is a complete stranger to us. So, it's up to you if you guys want to discover these truths about yourself or not. We can't consciously tell what our blood pressure is, for instance, yet we allow someone to strap our arm and take it anyway to know more about ourselves. So, maybe you do want to understand more about yourself and become aware of this, or perhaps you rather not know. I will not advise against taking it or taking it, and that goes for any of the IAT tests, but I will give you a disclaimer that might be somewhat reassuring if you do intend to take the test. If you do find that you have a bias, it does not necessarily mean that you are indeed prejudiced towards those groups. Sometimes, however, it may. I think it can be useful to be aware of this and thus try to correct yourself when you catch yourself behaving in a way that does not align with your morals, while for others, it might simply disturb them. So the choice is yours. I put the links in the description if you do want to take some of these tests. What I do suggest, however, is subscribing and liking this video. The books that intrigued me to discuss this matter was Blink, as well as Blind Spot, Hidden Biases of Good People. This is not sponsored, I just wanted to give credit where credit is due. I found this interesting today, but with that said, have a nice day.